I want to share this video with you, but I want your feedback on it. I want to know what you think. Do you denounce this behavior? Do you condemn this behavior by this child? Let's listen for a moment, and then we're going to show you a couple more videos.
Deep fried Oreo head ass.
I said, when I go one in the middle fry pan, they have one burn.
So,
Homecoming face ass.
Oh, bitch! Why you put that one thing?
Versus that don't look like this.
You got no ugly ass shirts like that.
I'm frying his ass. His deep fried Oreo head ass.
I said, when I go one in the middle fry pan, they have one burn.
so this says at the top of it, today's generation is very broken. And I want to examine that, and I want to know what you think. Do you condemn these children for their behavior? Do you say that what they're doing is bad and that they have bad parents and they're bad kids? Is that what you think? I just want to know what you think, because are the police our enemy? We're seeing it around the world. We're seeing it around the world that when people have oppressors and they feel oppressed, then the children of those who feel as though they are oppressed then do terroristic acts against the people who they feel are their oppressors. And so it's a fair question. We all remember in the year 2020 that the police were doing exactly what the government told them to do, that they were working against us, working against freedom, working against liberty. And so let's watch this video, and then I'm going to collect your thoughts. It says, this type of policing of lockdown in New York City has come under fire, with viral social media clips like this putting pressure on NYPD. It appears to show a mother forced to the ground in front of her child at a Brooklyn subway station in front of her young child. She was wearing a face mask, but it wasn't below her mouth.
That's too much, man. You're a female, that's too much.
So we see that one, and now let's look at it. Let's look at another clip.
The young mother wrestled to the ground and arrested by New York cops last week for not wearing a mask apparently has changed city and police procedures. Cops will no longer be allowed to arrest people simply for not wearing masks. This, according to Mayor de Blasio.
But police were told to arrest people for not wearing a face diaper. And we all know now in 2023 that the face diaper did absolutely nothing to stop the spread. It did zero. If your family member or your friends, my gym teacher got COVID and died, no masks stopped it.
And now an outpouring of protest about the way she was treated. Here's Eyewitness News reporter Stacey Sager.
What the cops did to me was wrong.
22-year-old Kalima Rozier of Brooklyn standing with her attorney today and speaking for the first time about this arrest last Wednesday inside the Barclays Center subway station. 6 NYPD officers eventually holding her on the ground after she refused to properly wear a mask in the city's subway. Authorities say she cursed at them, threatened to cough on them, and was told politely 3 separate times in front of her young son not to enter the subway without her mask properly pulled over her nose and mouth.
So listen to how the lying mainstream reporter, listen to how she frames it, as though the face diaper was doing anything to stop the spread of anything. Listen to the way she frames this young mother and her child.
The city subway. Authorities say she cursed at them, threatened to cough on them.
She cursed at them and threatened to cough on them.
And was told politely 3 separate times in front of her young son not to enter the subway without her mask properly pulled over her nose and mouth. Despite all of that,
they told her nicely to put it on 3 times. They said nicely, hey, you have to put your mask on. That's what they said, is that You have to wear your mask in the subway. That's what the police said. And so now let's look at another video.
Tonight over video of an NYPD officer punching and taking down a bystander who was watching officers make an arrest for an apparent social distancing violation. The video starts with a commotion as officers arrested a couple yesterday on 9th Street and Avenue D in the East Village. Suddenly, one of the officers breaks away from that arrest and walks up to a bystander with his taser drawn, swearing and telling him to move back. He then tackles the bystander to the ground, repeatedly hitting him. The NYPD says its Internal Affairs Bureau is investigating. The officer has been placed on modified duty.
So what you didn't see and you didn't hear, because it was censored for YouTube, you didn't hear that he literally bitch smacked the other man. You can hear it on the guy's face when he smacks him. And for what? For filming him. So now you're seeing the cops are enforcing some mandate that is not law. And now let's take a look at another video when the police themselves, are asked to follow a mandate.
Subway. What? Does the final part just me or to you guys if I don't want to? No problem. I'm just curious, like.
Well, you got actually, it states that as long as you can maintain 6 feet distance, you don't have to wear the mask.
But you guys don't
you want to
tonight a lesson in talking truth to power.
A freshman at NYU in a subway station in Brooklyn when he sees two New York cops not wearing masks. The teenager, with cameras rolling, calls out the officer.
And their reaction, not exactly textbook community policing. Here's Eyewitness News reporter Darla Miles.
Actually, it states that as long as you can maintain 6 feet distance, you don't have to wear the mask.
Rules for thee, but not for me.
But you guys don't
If you want to step within 6 feet of me, I'll gladly put on the mask.
Okay.
Well, actually, this NYPD officer has the facts all wrong. That is not the mask law in New York. And it's clear he and his partner did not like being asked about it.
You're the person that calls someone, you know what I mean? When someone's selling water bottle on the streets, you're the person that calls them. That's what you are. All right, Carrie, you're like the male version of Carrie. How is that?
I'm 99% sure I would not have taken the video if there wasn't the fine for the subway. I just asked, like, if the fine applied to them.
The 50-second interaction happened Tuesday night just before 8 at the Clark Street subway station in Brooklyn Heights. NYU freshman Mihai Chokhan says the unmasked officers immediately stood out to him because just 36 hours earlier, the MTA announced a $50 fine for those not wearing a mask in transit stations, subways, and buses.
Which did absolutely no good. A $50 fine for not wearing a face diaper, and it did no good. None whatsoever. We now know it did no good. It didn't stop anything at all whatsoever.
You asked the question, were you legitimately curious, or was there a little bit of sarcasm to your...
Like, I'd say it was like 80% actually like being curious and 20% like kind of being pissed off.
Police department, your job is to enforce the law. Why don't you follow the law?
They don't have to do what they're told to do. They can do whatever they want to us, and there's no repercussions for them at all whatsoever. And that's the plain, simple truth. And so when you get into it, you start to say, well, what kind of society are we living in here? That these cops will enforce any arbitrary created, made up law or policy from the elites, and then they'll push those policies and laws on us, arrest us, beat us, tase us, torture cuff us. But then when they're asked to follow the exact same policies or laws created, they refuse. They outright refuse and call you a Karen for saying you should have to follow the same rules that we do. That brings us right back to where we started. Where did they learn that behavior? They learned that behavior from their parents. These kids are between the ages of 3 and 6 years old at the most. They're toddlers. They're just little tiny guys. They learned that behavior because when the parents pass a cop in the road, they literally will say out loud, there goes that piece of garbage, trash, authoritarian, horrible human being. And so the kids are only repeating what they've seen and heard from their parents. So then why are people passing cops and saying these are the worst people in our country? They're the enemy. They're garbage, because the kids are repeating exactly what they learned from the parents. You cannot tell me that 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old children are inherently evil. You can't. Everything that they output is something that they input. Something was input into their brain, and then it goes output when they start to actually act out on it. This is the product of what the policing in America has created. We have youths, toddlers, who hate the cops before they're old enough to understand the dynamics of what this Stanford experiment has created in the United States. And America has spread this Stanford experiment across the globe, that this is the right way to treat your citizens, that you should hold them down on their belly and stick your knees in their back and in their neck. And the children have seen this, and they've learned now that the police are our enemies. So I ask you again, do you condemn this? And who are you condemning? Aren't you the adult? Aren't you the one that's supposed to say, man, these policies, procedures, and protocols that the police have set up for us free Americans is inhumane, barbaric, and brutal, and it has to change. But instead, there's so many comments on this video saying today's generation, very sad, ain't it? Parent taught racist by parents. Blacks are keeping racism alive. Blacks' lives matters. Why not start with the children? When you are brought up with low life, you become a low life. So who's the low life in the video? You're brought up by a low life, you remain a low life. Who are the low lives? To me, the low lives in this video are the jackboot, thug, pig, loser cops who are enforcing a set of policies, procedures, and protocols that are brutal, inhumane, and barbaric. And I understand why the children are saying, you little bitch, and hitting at him and trying to hit the cop, because we hate them. I'm sorry, but we do. We hate you. You're hated because you agreed to sign up to a set of policies, procedures, and protocols that are brutal, inhumane, and barbaric. I understand why the children are acting this way. Do you? Thank you. I'll see you on the next one. Later, Gators.